Hello, Freight Masters. It is Tuesday, February 28th, last day of the month. Before I get into today's video, I do want to apologize to everyone for not making our regular scheduled video yesterday. I just got really jammed up, and it was uber late by the time I got done. I don't know, but anyway, I got really busy. It's usually a good thing, keeps you out of trouble, right? So with that, today's video, I wanted to talk about toxic shipping and basically why we should avoid them. So number one, I'm losing my voice today, slowly but surely. Yeah, toxic shippers. First and foremost would be those shippers that don't value relationships. Whether you're a carrier that's working with a shipper directly, or a broker, or an agent, those shippers that don't or no longer value your relationship, you probably don't want to work with them anymore. Unless you somehow still making money with them, but typically what you run into, which I've run into, I believe I've mentioned in some previous videos, is that I've got one particular shipper. I've been with them for 6 years now, and it has gotten to the point where they no longer value relationships. Its market rate on a particular lane is $1,800 and change. Bottom end of the market is 17 and change. They'll send it to me for like 15, 16, maybe. And then I've got to try to make $1 on it and convince a carrier to move it. It's all about the bottom line. To an extent, I understand that, but I have too many regular trucks that run for me to send over loads to them that are only paying $1.32 a mile. It's just ridiculous. I'm not even going to offer it to those carriers. They think I've lost my mind. And I know there's been a lot of chatter about, brokers taking so much more than money. But it's not just the brokers. A lot of that is coming down from the shippers directly. There are shippers out there that are paying decent. I'm sure that there are brokers that are taking advantage of the low market rate. Hey, hello. But I think in general, I'm sorry, did that not shut off? I apologize. I clicked it. I guess maybe I didn't click it hard enough. I apologize. Okay, so I'll back up a little bit. Thank you for notifying me too, by the way. So I'm talking about toxic shippers, and starting off with those shippers that don't value relationships or don't value them any longer, right? And I was just explaining, like, I've got one shipper in particular. I've been with them for 6 years, and I felt like we had a pretty good thing going. We had a great line of communication. Things were, going very well. We had a very high success rate of loads getting picked up, delivered on time. With the exception of like weather and breakdowns, things are going to happen, but it was very, very rare. But it is getting more and more apparent that they no longer value relationships, and it's more about the bottom dollar than anything. And they have onboarded many new brokers. And I don't know, maybe this is coming from the higher echelon in the company or something. But I this past year has been very odd with them. And I'm using this as an example. But, if a particular lane, market rate is like I was mentioning, like $1,800 and change, bottom end of the market is 17 and change. They'll send it to me for 15, 16, at which point I very politely decline, right? They'll call and yell at me about why isn't this load picked up? Why this? Why that? And I'm like, what's the load number? And I'll look it up in our system. It's not even my load. So not only do they not value relationships, but they're also very, very disorganized, right? And that becomes another issue in itself. And I'll get nasty phone calls. I'll get nasty emails. There's no apology, nothing, right? Now, that all of this being said, I do have some really great shippers, right? I'm just using this one as an example because I'm getting ready to start clearing house. I think that I'm going to start pulling those shippers that, aren't valuing relationships, that are very disorganized, that don't want to pay a fair rate, because it makes me look like a jerk. And I'm tired of getting yelled at over the phone by carriers, on some of the spot market stuff, because the rate is just, it's too low. And I typically don't even post that type of stuff. But once in a while, I know that there's some carriers in the area that, I just need to get back home kind of a thing. And, kind of looking at what other freight is posted out there. I'm putting everything I possibly can on it. And obviously they feel like I'm still keeping, and I'm completely transparent. If they want to see a copy of my confirmation from my customer, I'm more than happy to share that with them. Right. I'm like I said, I'm all about building relationships and having transparency, fairness, all of these things, which I think that a lot of brokers are, more so than many probably think. But yeah, and I know that there's probably, brokers out there that have, great shippers, just like I've got some great shippers that are indeed taking advantage of the market, of where it's at until things kind of gradually start to pick up. But we don't want to work with those shippers anymore, right? Because inevitably what ends up happening is that when the market does flip and we've lost capacity, maybe we've lost some of our favorite carriers because they couldn't stay in business, and then they start screaming, where's the trucks? Where's the trucks? I thought you had trucks. Well, you drove them out of business. I did everything I could on my end. Like I said, I've always tried to kind of keep that happy marriage between, my shippers, my carriers, and myself, right? I want it to make sense regardless of what the market's doing. And when it doesn't, then it becomes an issue. So yeah, I think this evening, I'm going to start basically kind of clearing house. The second thing is avoiding those shippers with slow credit, right? Typically, your shippers are on a 30-day pay. But there are some shippers, even though they're on a 30-day pay, unless they request a 60 or 90, right? Because I do have some shippers that pay out basically almost quarterly. Unless you have that arrangement ahead of time with them, and they're paying, 40 days, 50 days, when they're on a 30-day, you still have to pay your carrier. So, and typically those shippers, they typically don't have a lot of freight, and their rates aren't always the best there either. So not that everything's about money, but it does make things difficult. I realize not everything's going to be gravy, right? But when it becomes a habitual issue with those shippers, slow paying, those are ones we probably want to avoid. Along with that, those shippers that say, yeah, I've got all kinds of loads for you, or I've got a few loads for you, but then don't ask you for your MC. They don't ask you for anything, any of your credentials. They almost flat out refuse filling out a credit app. And unless you're factoring and you can get their information and can run credit through them that way, those aren't really the greatest shippers either. Long loading and unloading times. One of the things that I do before I solicit a prospect is that I will literally pull up their, on the right-hand side of the page, like if you do any random Google search for a company, there's like that little Google business profile on the right-hand side with the reviews. I usually look at those reviews, And the reason I look at those is because a lot of times drivers will post, been sitting here for 6 hours, still don't have a dock yet. Things like that. I had a 1 p.m. pickup appointment, and here it is 8 p.m. They haven't even started to load me yet. And when you start to see consistency like that in the Google reviews, especially if they're recent, those are shippers that I typically want to avoid. Because there again, I'm trying to build relationships, not just with the shipper, but with my carriers as well. And that shipper is just going to be a headache. It's going to be very time consuming. Your driver or their dispatcher is going to end up blowing up your phone, blowing up your emails. Hey, what are we doing about this? Maybe it's an after hours load, and there's literally nobody in the office, right, that can answer the call. They haven't provided you with another line to be able to reach people on the loading dock to find out what's going on. It can be very frustrating. So again, I probably won't even bother soliciting those shippers, and oftentimes their detention and layover pay, because they know that they're slow, is usually garbage or non-existent. So they're not compensating you to compensate the carrier for that. So that's another example of a toxic type shipper that I would typically avoid. Another one would be those shippers that typically dictate rates, right? Kind of going back to that example of that one shipper that I brought up earlier, is that there's no wiggle room on the rate. We can go back to that lane paying $1,800 and change example. They're sending it over for 15. There's no wiggle room. You can move it for that or you can't. They don't care. So that's another type of shipper that I would avoid. There's just no fair rates or anything there. Sorry, I didn't see that right away. Yes, so I do. And then I wonder, as a new person, I should be that picky. Some reviews aren't all that great. As a new agent or broker, I think oftentimes we let ourselves kind of get into a trap of, I'll take any shipper, just, as long as they'll let me work with them and assist them with their freight needs. I'll take them. I'll take the chance. I'll do that. And when you're first starting out, like I said, that's very tempting to do. And you can do it, but don't let it become a habit, right? As you build your book of business and you end up with those shippers that do value relationships, that pay on time, that typically load and unload on time, things like all the things that I've mentioned, then you're going to want to separate yourself from some of those shippers that are toxic, right? And my final example are those shippers that soak up a lot of your time, right? In this industry, with so many things happening so fast, minute by minute, and you've got a shipper that's constantly blowing you up on the phone or an email. I've even had shippers literally I was in my email, watched their email pop up. Before I had a chance to finish reading their email, they sent me another follow-up email with, "Hello, can you please reply?" I really, you didn't even allow me 15 seconds to finish reading this book that you initially emailed me. So, those shippers that take up a lot of time. In fact, I've got one shipper. They're not a big shipper, and they're semi-fair on their rates. Typically I can move it. Sometimes I need to give them a little bit of a nudge, rate-wise. But I've actually kind of gone above and beyond, training the people in their office because they're not up to speed. They don't understand enough about the transportation industry. They're very new. To be compensated on my time, and literally we were supposed to have that phone call for like the last 3 weeks now. And I refuse to do any further training until this gets addressed. It's ridiculous. But they'll constantly blow me up. Oh, hey, Tim, you know, and they're all excited and this and that. We really got to get this going. And in fact, I just did a quote for them Thursday that I'm still waiting on an answer back if the rate's approved yet or not, you know. So, I mean, not that that's always a terrible amount of time, you know, if it's like an RFQ on a future load or something, but this is a load that, you know, they were all, oh, it's got to go. And then we've got this other load that's got to go. And, you know, let's pick it up in Indiana and it's got to go to California and blah, 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 you know. So then basically you end up sitting around, hurry up and wait. I'm getting about done with all of that. In fact, I left that shipper at one point in time, and I let them schmooze their way back in with me because I knew they were kind of toxic. I got tired of dealing with them, and I don't know. I shouldn't have done it, but I did, and now I'm back in that same situation again, right? Maybe I'm just a little too soft-hearted at times, but anyway, those are my examples of toxic shippers to avoid. If you guys have any examples of any other types of examples, I'd love to hear about it. We've got the live chat open. Or if you guys have any questions for me in regards to this or anything else, by all means, type those questions into the chat. We'll open it up for some Q&A. While you're doing that, did anybody pick up a new shipper this week? Or move their first load this week? Their very first load or their very first customer, or pick up an additional customer? Come on, I know somebody's probably got a new shipper, or maybe maybe you're working on your first load, right? They've started to send over a load list or something. Or maybe you're having problems with a new prospect. Are they not replying? That's another thing, is the communication thing. On the opposite side of those shippers that are blowing you up, you know, every 10, 15 minutes that have nothing to do with anything, are those shippers that do not communicate with you until they need something, and then it's rush, and the load may or may not come to fruition. Like sometimes they're just fishing, right? You have a second appointment with a new shipper tomorrow. That's awesome. I'm going to be thinking about you, and if you land that shipper after the second appointment, I'd love to hear about it in the next video, so we can celebrate that. You have an Excel spreadsheet with all their lanes. That's awesome. Now you said a new shipper. Is this your first shipper, or is it just an additional shipper to your already existing book? Either way, that's awesome, right? Because especially in this climate, it's getting very difficult to pick up shippers. But I think we've proved that you're very welcome. Hey, and it's your first shipper. Well, we have fireworks for you. Right on. I love it. Like I said, I'm your guys' biggest cheerleader, whether you realize it or not. And even when I'm not on the video, think about that. When you land that shipper or move that first load, be like, Tim's going to be so proud. Let's see. You're very welcome. I love doing these shows, sharing information. In fact, in regards to just these shows, if you're a member of the Facebook group, guys, I designed the Facebook group for everybody to be able to network, share information. There's no such thing as a stupid question, because we all started out somewhere, right? And anybody that is in the group that's toxic, we will find out about it. And if you're harassing new people, you go. So, this is supposed to be a very positive environment for everybody to learn and grow, and for carriers and shippers and brokers to connect with one another. We do have some shippers in the group. In fact, I've got a couple more pending right now. I just want to make sure to their legitimacy, right? Because we've had some fake shippers that have tried to enter in the group before, and then it got very spammy. So I'm hoping to get those approved very soon. Like I said, if they do come to fruition and everything. Yes, congratulations again. Is a customer considered a customer as soon as you send your paperwork or once you cover a load? A customer, in my opinion, and if everybody disagrees with me, by all means, but I consider a customer once you've sent your paperwork over to them and they've sent their credit application or their reference sheet to establish credit with you back. Once that's established and they are in your system, right, in your TMS, then you're basically set up and ready to start moving freight. Doesn't mean that they're going to have a load for you, that day or the next day or that week. Maybe things are just very slow with them right now, but they're set up. So at some point in time, they're going to send you a load. And there again, I follow up regularly. Text if you have their cell phone number, phone call, email, smoke signal, telegram, carrier pigeon, whatever it takes. Follow up until they tell you to leave them alone. Right? But yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So that's what is that? The last two videos we've had new shippers and first shippers being added. So that is outstanding news. That's awesome. I love it. I love it. I love it. Do you guys have any other questions for me? Like I said, I'll be more than happy to answer questions. Like I said, we've got the Q&A open. As a reminder, this Thursday, I don't have a time locked in yet, but I'm going to have Tom from Oprify on to discuss factoring, establishing your business credit if you're a new brokerage, and if you're a carrier, all the things that they help you with, the free consult, helping you to avoid double brokering, right? Watching out for those pitfalls. In fact, it's kind of funny. I actually got a call from a carrier who runs some freight for me occasionally. We've got a shipper out there. They don't do a tremendous amount. Well, let me say, there's times in the year where we move a lot of freight, and other times not so much. But I have a carrier that I've worked with, awesome guy, and he's moved loads for me, and he's having problem getting paid, and I think he got caught in a double brokering scam. Luckily, the load is only $1,000, but it's still $1,000, right? And in this climate, $1,000 is a bit more of a sting than it would be otherwise, right? If the market was up. So as soon as he gets parked, he's going to send me over, the information that he has, and we're going to do what we can to assist him in trying to resolve that matter so that driver gets paid, right? He's an owner operator. Like I said, uber nice guy. But Oprify, there again, they've got the information, the tools to help you avoid the double brokering. And I know sometimes some of that can sound kind of sketch, and it may be legit. It's just, it's gotten bad, right? And so yeah. Anyway, before I get on a tangent on that, but yeah, there's, like I said, we're going to discuss the business credit, avoiding double brokering, all kinds of things. And they do, if you're a veteran, law enforcement, active military, they offer discounts for that. So that's something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. And so, if you're looking for a factoring company or looking to change factoring companies, because like I said, I've dealt with factoring companies. In fact, I've even got some, occasionally I just shoot them off an email because I haven't heard from them in forever. Their customer service is absolutely garbage. I'm not going to call them out, but they are just horrendous. You're basically a number. They don't care. They absolutely don't care. They're all peaches and cream, in the beginning, and then they don't. So, like I said, Tom's not like that. Great guy, gives you his direct phone number. Their customer service, in my humble opinion, cannot be beat. And they've got, you're more than just a factoring client, right? I guess is really what I'm trying to say. Like they're really there to help your business succeed and grow and earn. So like I said, Thursday, and I will update on what time that is in the group and on the channel under the community tab. And obviously I'll try to give enough advance, schedule the video in far enough in advance. So again, you guys aren't going to want to miss that. Nobody has any questions for me today? Anybody have a problem prospect? What I mean by that is maybe a prospect that you're working on, but you're having a difficult time maybe getting in. You've got kind of a mixed feeling about them or anything. Overcoming objections. Is the prospect saying, "Hey, are you asset based?" You don't need to be asset based. In fact, I've had prospects ask me that, and they go, "Well, we primarily want to work with companies that are asset based." And while we are asset based, we don't run the equipment type that this particular prospect needed, right? But I did have a large carrier following in that area, and I had carriers that ran into that area anywhere between probably 5 miles and 40 miles of their shipping location, right? And the one thing that I did during this phone call, which turned it around, because they were more or less like, if you're not asset based, we don't need to keep talking. And I said, I understand that. I said, and I'm not here to waste your time, and I don't want you to waste mine. I said, while we are asset based, again, we don't offer the equipment type that you require. However, I do have a large carrier following that is either based in the area or delivers in the area, and we're constantly looking for outbound freight. I'm not a load board jockey. Typically, if you call me and even at 7 o'clock at night and say, "Hey Tim, I need this load covered. I need someone here at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning," usually I can get back to you in 5-10 minutes. And that was enough to more or less turn that conversation around from a no to a go, right? They gave me my first shot. In fact, they're still on with me to this day, and we've got a great relationship. So not every shipper is toxic, but let's see. The shipper I'm working on ships out of 3 distribution centers and run weekly to almost 400 stores across the country. Is there a routing app that can help me lay out the stops and create routes? Yeah. Google Maps for one. Just type in it. I'm assuming that these are like multi pickup or multi-stop loads. So I would just say, like, let's just, for example, is route consolidation, right? So I actually ran into this with that load that I mentioned that I quoted last Thursday. They actually, and they're again going back to a shipper that doesn't really completely understand routing and the whole transportation industry. Is they had a load that picked up 7 miles from the delivery. Then they wanted the driver to run, I forget exactly how many miles it was, but it was quite a few miles north, and then turn around and come back to the delivery. And I said, well, is there any way we could just route this where the second pickup is first, drive the south to the original first pickup and make that the second pickup, and then deliver and then you're 7 miles from delivery. Um, so one pick up to 10 stops per truck. Right. Yeah. Typically, like, I mean, there's a lot of them, and you can Google those. You can use that through Google. Sometimes, I don't know what TMS you're using. Some TMSs actually offer a kind of like a routing uh, map, or it'll kind of help you organize that, because you want to cut out any unnecessary miles, right, as possible. And sometimes they can get a little tricky. But yeah, well, let's see. Uh, so you could just Google, like, I don't know if you're on Apple or not on your phone. That's one way to do it. Trucker Tools, Google Play. There's a truck map. Maybe if you have a Chromebook or on your phone, Smart Truck Route. There's a list. You can download. If you're on a desktop, which I prefer to use my desktop, I'm old. I don't do my phone's meant for talking and stuff. But yeah, truck map. There's a lot of that. Send app link. But yeah, more or less, find one that suits your needs, I guess, is what I would say. Some people like some apps better than others. But there's, like I said, there's a lot of them out there, and literally with Google Maps, like you could take, let's just say if it was Chicago, Illinois to, this is probably going to be a fairly easy one, to Dallas, Texas to El Paso, Texas. Now we don't want that. Maps. Click on your maps. Why is this not doing this? Making a liar out of me. Right? Search. See, normally I can do this. Why is this doing this to me? Maybe we put in truck route. Flattest route. Oh, that's elevation routing. Boy, oh boy. Maybe driving. Nope, that one won't work. I mean, I guess obviously, like, okay, like if it was a one-on-one, right? It gives us this, and then we can click on it. Like if you have your first destination, obviously if it's like the closest one, then you can go in here and add destinations. So we had El Paso, Texas. So say that's reach out to them, see if that favorite. Oh, you have Ascend. Yeah, it's been a while since I've looked at Ascend. They may or may not. Honestly, it doesn't come to mind. I'm a little cargo van driver. I do local routing with Google Maps. Not that many stops though. Right. Yeah. So Google Maps, obviously, a driver there. But this is one way where you can route this out, right? And then oftentimes I think you can kind of like drag these over if you want, however. But I think typically it gives you like the shortest route, normally, unless you play around with it and drag it around. But yeah, I typically use Google Maps, and you can just keep adding destinations. Maybe you had another one in Phoenix. Maybe you had a stop in Wichita, so they're going to be Chicago to Wichita to Dallas to El Paso to Phoenix. You know, um, but that's what I would suggest. What would you say is the typical asking per stop in this climate? It seems as if now there is not even considering the extra stops, right? So what I typically do is I will survey carriers. I will talk to drivers, usually a minimum of three. I prefer to do several. Give them the load details as accurate as I have them. Explain the stops in each one. Ask them how much they would charge for that load, and then break that down uh, for the stops. Now, obviously, you're going to have carriers that are, you know, within reason. They can't give you 2018 rates, right? Because if that's the case, then you're going to basically overbid yourself out of those loads, out of those lanes. Um, but if they're reasonable, if your shipper's reasonable, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to secure those. Not all carriers want to do multi-stop loads like that. Um, some don't care. A lot of them, they just want one and ones. They'll maybe consider a one and two, or any variants thereof. But yeah, when you start getting into like multi drops or picks, because you're talking wait time, right? One of the things that I would ask is what's the typical, and if these are by appointment, check to find out how long the offload times are at each stop, right? And depending upon how close some of these stops are, can we get a couple of the stops off in one day? Are they close enough together where it's basically like a 2 or 3 day run for the driver? These are all things that I would typically consider. Right, but without knowing where those grocery stores are, like let's say if they were Chicago to St. Louis and you were delivering to, you know, 10 stores between Chicago and St. Louis, what's the offload time for each one of those stops? Um, that's something that I would want to know. I actually, when I ran a lot of produce, um, one of the things that I hated about some of the stores, like Walmart in particular, was that Walmart had a tendency to over order because they wanted to make sure that they had a consistent flow of fresh produce. So whether it was corn or watermelons or whatever, it didn't matter. When they hit capacity at their DC and they still had fresh produce coming in, they would start rejecting trucks. Um, that is a no go situation because now we've got to try to find a place to basically offload this produce. Your customer's upset, your driver's upset. Um, it's never a good scenario, right? And so, then you get stuck into a situation where you're more or less assisting your shipper, your driver, in a place to either cross dock, or sometimes shippers will have a maybe another buyer somewhere, hopefully in the area within 100 miles, where the driver can offload it. I actually ran into a similar situation with Myers. Well, similar but different. It was we had a delivery appointment on a load of produce, and I think it was like a 3 p.m. delivery appointment or something. This was a few years ago. Um, Driver showed up. He was there on time, not too early, wasn't late. And then apparently they had switched his delivery appointment. Did not inform my customer, did not inform me, did not inform the driver. Just poof, no communication whatsoever. In which point my carrier was quite upset. And that was a whole nother scenario. Um, So is there money in produce? Sure. But it comes with its share of headaches, right? Those being a couple of examples. Um, right. Yeah. I get that. That's the topic of discussion. Sorry, forgot to turn my phone off. Yeah. So there again, if you've got that discussion with your customer tomorrow, I would start talking to carriers now, especially if you already have a list of the lanes and stops. Or just if you don't have a list of all the stops, start asking, hey, here's the lane. This could run up to 10 stops. What would you typically charge for this depending on the stop? We'll use the 2 hour if you don't already know, as the average offload time, and if it's that many stops, typically it's just a couple of pallets. I would hope that they would be by appointment so the driver can show up and he's in and out of there in 30, 40 minutes, to offload a couple of pallets, at each stop, and then he's in and out of there. Sometimes it's not even a matter of getting offloaded. It's a matter of them getting the paperwork back to the driver, right? Those people in the office there, I've had receivers hold paperwork for whatever reason. Jeez, oh Pete, I'm popular all of a sudden. So yeah, those would all be questions that I would ask if you don't already have them. And like I said, I would survey, carriers potentially interested in those lanes, and find out rather than trying to kind of take a stab at it. And I obviously, without knowing who your customer is, which I don't want to know, but how reasonable they are. And maybe, once you get your rate from your carrier, obviously you add your margin. You also have to kind of, okay, let me ask you this. Is this for like year-round freight? Like, are they wanting you to commit to a specific rate on these lanes? Because if that's the case, at some point in time, this market is going to turn. Now, I know there's been a lot of chatter on when, whether it'll be kind of all of a sudden or gradual. I think the consensus is that it'll be a very slow progression in the market. Depending upon equipment type, I think the average we're looking at is somewhere between August and October. And it put together a carrier list of almost 50 carriers. Okay, awesome. Yeah, then I would, like I said, I would start talking to them, find out how much they want for each stop, and go from there and base everything off of that, as long as you feel it's fair. Obviously you want to be fair to your carrier and to your customer and still make $1, so it sounds like for the most part, you get it pretty well handled. Like I said, I would just ask those questions about the offloading times, loading time, things like that. It's growing currently. They're running weekly. Next month, volume can double. Right. So, yeah, as long as they're not holding you to like a yearly commitment on those quotes, maybe month to month or something, that would be a little bit more reasonable because, like I said, at some point in time, the market is going to have to turn, and you don't want to get caught with, in a situation where the market rate, increases by $800 or something, and then you have, you're stuck. So I hope I answered that for you and I understood everything correctly. But wow, I didn't realize we've been running for about 45 minutes now already. I didn't anticipate this video going this long. Awesome. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I'm glad it was helpful. And again, guys, if we've got some resources there. I don't know anybody that needs it. I just, again, throw it out there. If you need a TMS, Easy Propel, obviously I recommend them. If you're looking for industry news, there's some of that on there. sales pitches, and then of course I've gotten a description to the email script and the other cold calling script that I have. There's a different link for some of that. If you're looking for additional training, factoring, whatever, there's links for everything in the description, or visit one of the websites. If you're a carrier out there right now, we've got information there for you as well. Different resources. Some are free. Accessorial agreements, for instance, you can download and edit, you add your company logo and information and everything on there. So we've talked about that in previous videos. I don't want to get off track. But, okay, you masters, that's awesome. We got some new shippers. We got some new prospects. We're quoting lanes. That's awesome. I am very, 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 very happy and excited for you all. And yeah, I think it was a great show. I think we were able to share a lot, and we've got some success stories out there. And I wish everyone best of luck. As a reminder, one more time, Tom is going to be on with me on Thursday from Oprify to discuss business credit, factoring, all that stuff. Like I said earlier in the video, I mentioned some of the benefits. I don't want to spoil too much of that, right? For Tom, he'll be like, well, you told him everything. But so I guess with that, we'll go ahead and close this down. If you guys missed anything, I see a few people kind of jumping in and out there again. Go back, because I think it was some information there that you probably missed out on that you're not going to want to. So with that, as always, be kind to one another. Bye-bye now.